The hostess barely had time to step aside before I walked through the front door of my husband's restaurant. It was everything I had paid for. The warm amber lighting I had approved, the exposed brick walls I had selected from 3 different contractors' proposals, the hand-lettered menu boards I had sourced from an artisan in Brooklyn after my husband said he wanted something with authenticity, the custom walnut bar top, the linen napkins, the entire open kitchen concept. Every single design choice in this room had come from a spreadsheet I built over 14 months, funded entirely by the $480,000 I had inherited from my grandmother's estate. My husband was standing at the host stand in a brand new chef's coat with his name embroidered in navy blue script above the breast pocket. He had one hand resting on the shoulder of a woman I recognized immediately from the Instagram posts my sister had forwarded me 3 weeks ago. The woman was laughing at something he had just said, her hand pressed flat against his chest in a gesture so comfortable and practiced it turned my stomach. She was wearing a dress that fit her like she had spent a considerable amount of time selecting it for exactly this occasion. He saw me before I had taken 3 steps inside. The laughter died on his face. His hand slid off her shoulder. His eyes swept from my face to the 2 people walking in beside me, and I watched the color drain out of him in real time. He did not recognize my attorney, but he absolutely recognized the uniform of the county marshal standing to my left. "What are you doing here?" My husband's voice was low and controlled, the way it always got when he was trying to manage a situation in public. He stepped away from the woman and moved toward me with his hands out, palms flat, like he was trying to calm down a car alarm. "Elena, this is a private event. You were not on the guest list. We talked about this." "We did talk about it," I said. I reminded him of the exact conversation 2 weeks ago, when I had asked whether I would be attending the grand opening of the restaurant I had financed, and he had told me, without any visible discomfort, that the launch party was for industry people and close family only, and that I would not really fit the vibe. I was his wife. I had written the check that built the room we were standing in. I did not fit the vibe. He had said it to my face, and genuinely believed I would accept it. I had accepted it. For exactly 14 days, which was precisely how long it took my attorney to finish preparing the paperwork I was now holding in a flat manila envelope. My husband took another step toward me. His jaw was tight. "Elena, I am asking you respectfully to leave before you embarrass yourself. We have investors here tonight. We have press. Whatever you think you are doing right now, I promise you it is not worth it." He reached out and touched my arm. The county marshal stepped directly between us. "Sir," the marshal said, his voice carrying the specific, unhurried authority of someone who has done this hundreds of times and is not remotely interested in being argued with, "step back and keep your hands to yourself." My husband stumbled backward. He looked at the marshal's badge, then at the official seal on the documents my attorney was already removing from the envelope, and something shifted in his expression. The controlled, managing tone evaporated. What replaced it was something rawer and much less polished. "What is this?" he said. His voice cracked slightly on the second word. My attorney set the document on the host stand in front of him. "She did it the way you set down something that does not need any additional commentary. That is a notice of default and a demand for immediate commercial lien enforcement," she said pleasantly. "Your wife holds a recorded $480,000 lien against all business assets, equipment, and fixtures associated with this establishment. The lien matured 10 days ago. You were notified by certified mail at this address and at your personal residence. You did not respond and you did not cure the default." My husband stared at the paper. His lips were moving slightly, like he was reading the same line over and over and it kept saying the same thing. The woman in the carefully selected dress had drifted closer, trying to hear. When she caught enough of the conversation to understand what was happening, she stopped moving entirely. My husband looked up. "This is insane. You cannot just walk into my restaurant on opening night and this is harassment." He turned and scanned the room. His eyes landed on a group of 4 men and 2 women near the bar, all of them in the particular kind of understated, expensive clothing that signals serious money. He had been pitching them for 3 months. I knew because I had helped him prepare the pitch deck before I discovered that he had been rerouting the final loan draw from our joint account to a separate account I was not on. "Elena," he said, dropping his voice. His tone shifted again, this time into something almost gentle. Can we please just step outside and talk about this like adults? Whatever you think I did, we can work it out. You do not want to do this in front of all these people. Think about what you are doing. I have been thinking about it for 3 weeks, I told him. I thought about it very carefully. I nodded to the marshal. The marshal lifted his radio, said 2 words into it, and the side door of the restaurant opened. 6 people in gray work shirts came through, carrying equipment, dollies, moving blankets, and the specific professional efficiency of a crew that had been briefed on exactly what they were there to collect. My husband watched them walk past him toward the kitchen. "No," he said. No, those are commercial kitchen assets. You cannot just—" He turned to the marshal. "You cannot let them take the equipment. I have reservations tomorrow. I have a full book for the next 3 weeks. I need that kitchen to operate." The marshal did not look up from the clipboard he was reviewing. The lien covers all fixed commercial assets purchased with the lien holder's funds, including kitchen equipment, front-of-house fixtures, and all branded signage, he said. The asset schedule has been verified against the purchase receipts your wife provided. If you believe any item on that list was purchased with separate funds, you are welcome to file a motion with the court. Tonight, we are executing the notice. My husband turned to me. His voice dropped into something I had not heard before, a genuine, unguarded panic that had nothing to do with performance. "Elena, please, I am begging you. This is my life. This restaurant is everything I have worked for. You know what this means to me. Whatever happened between us, you cannot take this away from me in front of everyone." I looked at him for a moment. I thought about the 14 months of spreadsheets. I thought about the calls I made to contractors on my lunch breaks, the weekends I spent reviewing insurance policies and health code requirements and liquor license applications while he focused on the menu. I thought about the morning I found the second bank account and realized that the $62,000 draw I thought had gone to the final kitchen equipment installation had actually gone somewhere else entirely. "I know exactly what it means to you," I said. I turned and walked toward the dining room to wait. The next 40 minutes were instructive. I have worked in commercial lending for 6 years. I have seen businesses close, properties repossessed, and assets liquidated. But there is something different about watching it happen in a room that is still decorated for a party. The movers worked methodically through the kitchen while a catering staff of 8 stood against the far wall in their uniforms, unsure whether they were still employed. The custom pendant lights over the bar stayed, they were hardwired and not on the asset list. But the bar stools went. The espresso machine went. The 2 commercial convection ovens and the 6-burner range my husband had special ordered from a restaurant supply company in New Jersey, the ones he had described in the pitch deck as the heart of the culinary experience, those went too, wrapped in gray moving blankets and rolled out through the side door on heavy steel dollies. The investors near the bar watched all of this with the flat, unreadable expressions of people doing rapid mental calculations. One of the women said something quietly to the man beside her. He shook his head once. Then all 6 of them began the deliberate, unhurried process of collecting their coats. My husband saw them moving. He crossed the room in 6 strides, his hand outstretched. "Robert," he said. "Robert, please give me 5 minutes to explain. This is a domestic dispute. My wife is angry and she is making it my investor's problem, but the business fundamentals have not changed. The location is solid. The concept is differentiated. I can have replacement equipment here within a week." The man named Robert stopped and looked at my husband with the kind of expression that closes doors permanently. "You have a $500,000 lien in default and the sheriff is currently taking your stoves," Robert said. "That tells me everything I need to know about how you manage money." He buttoned his coat. "Good luck to you." All 6 of them left without looking back. My husband stood in the middle of the dining room. The ambient playlist he had carefully curated was still running through the speakers, something low and jazzy that was completely wrong for the atmosphere that currently existed in the room. A busser reached over and turned it off. The silence that replaced it was considerable. His mother had been standing near the back of the room for the past 20 minutes. I had seen her arrive shortly after the movers started. She had come in fast, the way she always moved when she believed her intervention could still change the outcome of something, and she had spent the first 15 minutes alternating between loudly informing anyone who would listen that I was mentally unstable and demanding that the marshal produce additional documentation. The marshal had produced it. She had gone quiet after that. Now she walked across the dining room toward her son. She was a woman who had spent 30 years building a very specific identity around her son's success, and watching that identity be disassembled and loaded onto a truck was doing something visible to her face. She looked at me as she passed. "What you have done tonight," she said, her voice shaking with a controlled fury that I had been on the receiving end of more than once, "is unforgivable. You are his wife. You are supposed to support him. Instead, you humiliated him in front of the entire industry. What kind of woman does this?" "The kind who read the bank statements," I said. She stopped. I watched her process that. She had been his most enthusiastic advocate for the restaurant since the beginning, the person who had told everyone in her social circle that her son was opening a flagship location in the West Loop. She had called it his restaurant in every conversation. Not our restaurant. Not the restaurant his wife financed. His. I had a question for her, and I asked it simply. "Did he tell you where the $62,000 went?" She did not answer. I told her anyway. I walked her through it concisely: the loan draw, the separate account, the transfers, the paper trail my attorney had spent 2 weeks reconstructing. I told her about the car, a leased Range Rover currently registered to a company my husband had incorporated 4 months ago using his girlfriend's address. His mother turned and looked at her son. My husband was already shaking his head. "Mom, she is twisting everything. It was an operating expense. The lease on the Range Rover," I said, "is in your girlfriend's name." Everyone in the remaining room heard that. The catering staff against the wall. The bartender who had been pretending to inventory bottles for the past half hour. The 2 local food bloggers who had absolutely not put their phones away. The woman in the carefully selected dress went very still. My husband looked at her. A specific, desperate negotiation happened across his face in about 3 seconds, the attempt to find the right combination of words that would address both audiences simultaneously. He did not find it. "What car?" the woman said. Her voice was not what it had been earlier in the evening. The warmth was completely gone. My husband exhaled. "Babe. Do not babe me." She took 2 steps toward him. "What car, Marcus?" He ran his hand over his face. "It is just a lease. It is a business asset. It was a tax strategy. It is a $78,000 car registered to my address," she said, and her voice had acquired a quality that I recognized: the sound of someone doing arithmetic and not liking the answer. "You told me the restaurant was going to generate enough to cover all of it once you launched. You told me the investor money was coming in and everything was already handled." She gestured at the room, at the movers, at the stripped kitchen visible through the pass-through window. "What is actually handled, Marcus? Because from where I am standing it looks like your wife owns everything in here and you have been running some kind of shell game for the past year and I am the address on the lease." This is not the time he started. "Do I have any legal exposure on this car?" she demanded. He did not answer fast enough. She picked up her bag from the chair where she had left it and walked toward the front door. My attorney took a small step to the side to let her pass. She did not say anything else. The door swung shut behind her and the room was quieter again. My mother-in-law turned back to her son. She was breathing carefully, the way she did when she was working very hard not to say everything she was thinking. "The $200,000, she said finally. My husband closed his eyes. I looked at her. "What $200,000? She looked at me with an expression I had never seen on her face in the 3 years I had known her. It was not contempt. It was something much closer to shame. She told me herself. 8 months ago, my husband had approached his mother for a private loan. He had told her it was a bridge gap, a temporary shortfall while the construction permits cleared. He had told her the restaurant was fully capitalized and that he just needed 90 days. She had written him a check for $200,000 from her retirement savings because he was her son, and she believed him, and because believing him had been her full-time occupation for his entire life. He had not paid back $1. She had not known about the second account. She had not known about the car. She had not known that the bridge loan she had given him had been used, in part, to maintain the lifestyle of a woman she had never met. My husband opened his eyes. His mother was looking at him with an expression that was reorganizing itself by the second from anger into something colder and more permanent. "That is my retirement," she said quietly. I gave you my retirement because you told me you were going to take care of it. She paused. You were going to take care of it like you took care of the restaurant. Like you took care of your marriage. Mom, I will pay you back. I just need time to. She held up one hand and he stopped talking. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she picked up her coat from the back of a chair, folded it over her arm, and walked toward the door. She did not slam it. She did not say anything dramatic. She simply left. And the evenness of it was somehow worse than anything else that had happened in the last hour. My husband stood alone in the dining room of a restaurant that was being emptied of everything I had paid for. The catering staff had quietly disappeared into the back. The bartender had his jacket on. The food bloggers were still there, both phones still recording, because of course they were. He looked at me. For the first time all evening, there was nothing calculated in his expression. No management, no spin, no audience awareness. He just looked exhausted and small in a way I had not seen before. Elena, he said, I know I cannot ask you for anything right now. I know I do not deserve it. But I need you to know that the restaurant, the concept, everything we talked about when we were first planning it, that was real. I meant all of it. I just made some bad decisions and I did not know how to tell you. I looked around the room. The amber lights I had approved. The exposed brick I had selected. The hand-lettered menu boards. You made some bad decisions, I said. And I made one, which was not putting my name on the operating agreement when my attorney told me to 18 months ago, but I corrected mine. The lead marshal stepped up beside me and handed me a clipboard. Everything on the asset schedule had been checked off. The trucks were loaded. The process was complete. You have until midnight to remove any personal belongings from the premises, the marshal told my husband. After that, the locks will be changed pursuant to the lien enforcement order. My husband looked at the clipboard. His throat moved. I handed the clipboard back to the marshal, picked up my coat, and walked out of my restaurant for the last time as someone else's wife. 4 months later, I sat on the same side of a courtroom table I had been on since the beginning of all of this, the side with the organized binders and the clean documentation and the attorney who had not lost a financial recovery case in 11 years. Across the aisle, my husband looked like he had aged in a way that had nothing to do with time. He was wearing a suit I did not recognize, which meant it was new, which meant someone had lent him money or he had a credit card I did not know about. His own attorney was a younger man with an aggressively confident handshake who had filed 4 different motions in the past 2 months, all of which had been denied. Your Honor, his attorney said, standing and addressing the judge with the practiced confidence of someone who still believed the outcome of this was negotiable, we are asking the court to consider a structured payment arrangement in lieu of a lump sum recovery on the lien. My client acknowledges the debt but contends that the enforcement action, specifically the seizure of all operating assets, constituted a disproportionate remedy that prevented any possibility of business recovery and thus the generation of funds to satisfy the judgment. The judge, a compact woman in her late 50s who had been on the civil bench for 22 years and whose face suggested she found very little in life surprising anymore, made a note on her pad. My attorney stood. Your Honor, the enforcement action was executed precisely according to the terms of the recorded lien, which the respondent signed and initialed on every page. The disproportionate remedy argument has been addressed and rejected in the respondent's previous 2 motions. What we are here for today is the finalization of the dissolution, the allocation of the confirmed debt, and the court's determination regarding enforceability given the respondent's current financial disclosures. She slid a document to the clerk. Specifically, she continued, we are asking the court to note that $62,000 of the lined funds was fraudulently diverted from a joint account into a private account under the respondent's sole control and subsequently used for personal expenditures unrelated to the stated business purpose. Under applicable statute, that portion of the debt cannot be discharged, as it was obtained and diverted through deliberate misrepresentation. My husband's attorney leaned over and said something into his client's ear. My husband shook his head, a small, tired movement. The judge reviewed the document. She looked at my husband. Is the diversion of funds as described in this affidavit accurate? My husband's attorney started to stand. My husband put a hand on his arm and stood up himself. Yes, Your Honor, he said. It is accurate. His attorney sat back with an expression that suggested he had advised against that response. The judge made another note. The $62,000 is non-dischargeable, she said. She looked at the full figure on the sheet in front of her. Given the scope of the total debt, the respondent's current income status as a line cook at a hotel restaurant at an annual salary that she read aloud, and the absence of significant liquid assets, I am granting a wage garnishment order. She named the percentage. It will begin with the respondent's next pay cycle and will continue until the principal and all accrued interest are satisfied. She looked at my husband over the top of her glasses. That will take approximately 22 years at your current income level, she said. I would encourage you to increase your earning capacity. She signed the dissolution order, picked up her gavel, and brought it down once. I was divorced before the echo faded. 11 months after that, I stood in the middle of what used to be a restaurant and was now something considerably better. I had taken the recovered equipment, the commercial ovens, the convection units, the full kitchen build-out, and sold the lot of it to a culinary school in Evanston that had been looking for a complete professional kitchen setup at a price that let them stretch their grant money. The sale covered nearly 40% of the original investment recovery. I used that capital, along with the commercial property value of the space itself, to build something I had been designing in my head for longer than I had been planning anyone else's restaurant. It was a shared commercial kitchen and food business incubator, 12 fully equipped prep stations, walk-in cold storage, a commercial bakery section, a recording studio corner for content creators in the food space, and a small business resource center with a resident advisor 2 days a week. The warm amber lighting was still there because I liked it. The exposed brick was still there because it was structural. Everything else was different. We had 14 resident businesses in the first cohort. A Dominican grandmother running a frozen pastry line she had been selling out of her home kitchen for 8 years, finally with the commercial certification to pitch grocery chains. A 26-year-old who had built a 6-figure catering client list operating out of a church basement and needed a real address on her insurance paperwork. 3 other food entrepreneurs at various stages, all of them serious, all of them working harder than anyone I had seen in the 18 months I had spent funding my husband's vision. The incubator turned its first profit in the 8th month. By month 11, 2 of our resident businesses had signed retail distribution deals, and 1 had been featured in a regional food magazine. We had a waiting list. I was standing at the long prep counter near the back, reviewing the month-end numbers when my phone lit up with the automated notification from my bank. The garnishment deposit had cleared. It came on the same date every 2 weeks, reliably, the way a utility bill comes impersonal and inevitable. I thought about my husband standing behind a hotel banquet line somewhere, breaking down prep for an event he had not planned, cooking food he had not designed, under the direction of someone who had no idea who he thought he used to be. I did not think about it with satisfaction. Exactly. I thought about it the way you think about a bill you are glad to have behind you, not with pleasure, but with a clean, practical sense of completion. His mother had not recovered her full retirement. She had recovered enough, from what I had heard through a mutual acquaintance, to stay in her home and restructure her accounts. She had not spoken to her son since the night of the restaurant opening, or if she had, no one had told me about it. The woman in the carefully selected dress had retained her own attorney within 2 weeks of the opening night. The Range Rover had been surrendered to the leasing company. I had no further information and required none. I put my phone back in my pocket and looked around the kitchen. The afternoon light was coming through the windows at the angle that made the stainless steel equipment look almost warm. One of my resident tenants was at Station 4, working on a new batch recipe, her notebook open beside her mixing bowl, headphones in, completely absorbed. Near the front, 2 others were going over packaging samples at the community table, talking with the specific animated energy of people who believe in what they are making. I had spent 14 months building a room for someone else's ambition, and I had done it well. Every element I had sourced and selected and approved had served its purpose. The room had looked exactly like what it was supposed to look like. It had just been intended for the wrong thing. The thing I had built for myself looked different. It was louder and less polished, and the branding was still a work in progress. But every person in it was there because they had earned their spot and were using it to build something real. And on most days, that distinction felt like the only one that mattered. There are things they do not put in the financial literacy books, and one of them is this. The most expensive education you can get is the one that comes from learning the difference between funding a dream and building one. I had paid $480,000 for that lesson, and for a long time I was not sure whether the return would ever justify the cost. 11 months in, the numbers were starting to answer that question. The lesson that I carry with me now, and the one I want to leave you with, is that your investment in someone else's vision is only as protected as the documents you signed before you wrote the check. Love does not survive being weaponized, and blind trust is not a virtue when it is being used as a mechanism. Protect your capital the way you protect your time and your peace, because all three of them are finite, and all three of them can be taken from you by someone who was never planning to give them back. Know what you own. Know what you are owed. And if someone tells you that you do not fit the vibe of the room you paid to build, make sure you hold the lease. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe to Recovery Stories for more. We are here every week, and we are not going anywhere.